The room fell silent the moment he walked in, his presence slicing through the tension like a sharp blade, and before anyone could utter a word, his voice dropped into the air, deep, rough, and edged with a jealousy he could no longer hide. "Who told you to dress this daring?" he snapped as his secretary fixed her skirt, his gaze burning hotter than the late morning sun filtering through the high-rise windows. That one sentence was enough to freeze her breath, enough to expose a crack in the armor of the man who ruled an empire without ever flinching. It was a moment no one expected, not in a building where fear kept hearts quiet and loyalty kept secrets buried, yet his own storm of emotion broke loose without warning. Before we dive deeper, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more hearts. She steadied her trembling fingers against the edge of her skirt, pretending the fabric needed straightening when, in truth, she was simply trying to hide how her heart had started racing. She had worked for him for 3 years, long enough to understand his moods, long enough to know that his tone meant far more than agitation. He wasn't angry because her outfit was inappropriate, he was angry because something inside him shifted when he saw her, something he had spent years burying beneath command, discipline, and shadows. She whispered a quiet apology, barely meeting his eyes, but the damage was already done. Something unspoken lingered between them, stretching across the room like a wire pulled too tight. She had dressed modestly, simply, but differently than usual, a fitted skirt, a softer blouse, a touch of confidence she had earned after months of healing from her own struggles. She hadn't changed for him, she had changed for herself, but he couldn't understand that. For the rest of the morning, he couldn't focus. His staff delivered reports he barely read, associates came in and out of meetings he couldn't recall, and every fragment of his attention trailed back to her, her quiet footsteps, the subtle scent of her perfume when she passed by, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous. He hated how deeply she affected him, hated how jealousy gnawed at him the moment he noticed others looking at her. He had spent years convincing himself that she was simply an employee, just part of the structure that kept his empire unshakable. But deep down, he knew she was the anchor of his day, the only gentle voice in a world built on violence and fear, the only softness he allowed himself to feel. And that scared him more than any rival ever could. She could sense his unrest even without looking at him. She always could. The truth was, she had grown used to reading the subtleties of his mood, the shift in his shoulders, the tightening in his jaw, the slight pause before he signed a document. She used to think it was part of her job, but over time, she realized it was because caring for him had become second nature. He was the last person she expected to matter this much. He was dangerous, complicated, locked inside a world stacked with secrets, yet he had been there on the darkest night of her life, at a time when she had no one left. To her, he wasn't the Mafia boss everyone feared, he was the man who gave her a job when her world had collapsed, the man who stood outside her hospital room after her accident, the man who made sure she always arrived home safely, even though he pretended he didn't care. When he finally approached her later that afternoon, she braced herself, but he didn't look angry anymore. He looked tired, tired of pretending. He murmured an apology that barely made it past his lips, and for a split second, she saw the truth behind his walls. His jealousy wasn't rooted in control, it was rooted in fear, fear of losing her, fear of not being worthy, fear of wanting something he believed he could never have. He hadn't lived a life that allowed softness, not until she arrived and unknowingly taught him what it meant to feel something real. And now, seeing her grow stronger, seeing her become more confident, terrified him because it meant she could one day walk away. She didn't argue, didn't scold him, didn't remind him that she had the right to wear whatever she wanted. Instead, she simply spoke with honesty, explaining how her courage had grown slowly, piece by piece, and how her wardrobe was just one small reflection of the woman she was becoming. For the first time, he listened, really listened, and something in his heart shifted. He realized he had never asked about her healing, her growth, her quiet victories. He had been so focused on protecting her that he never considered how she was trying to rebuild herself. That realization softened him in ways he had never expected. Days turned into weeks, and though neither of them said it aloud, the tension between them evolved into a gentle, unspoken understanding. He became less controlling, more patient, more present. She became braver, allowing herself to step into the world with a confidence she had once believed she lost forever. Together, without planning it, they began reshaping each other's lives. He found himself drawn to her strength, her kindness, her ability to remain compassionate in a world built on brutality. She found herself drawn to the quiet parts of him, the man who watched the sunrise from his office window when he couldn't sleep, the man who memorized her coffee order even though he pretended not to notice, the man who carried more regret than he ever admitted. Their bond deepened through small moments that seemed insignificant to others, a shared late-night meal after a long shift, the way he handed her his jacket whenever she looked cold, the way she reminded him to rest when he pushed himself too hard. She wasn't afraid of him like others were. She saw the man beneath the title, the man who wanted redemption even if he didn't believe he deserved it. And slowly, he began to realize that she wasn't just a secretary. She was the one person who made him believe he could be better than the darkness he came from. But change never comes without conflict. The more their connection grew, the more others noticed. Rumors spread. Associates whispered. Rivals saw an opportunity. And for the first time, he feared something that had nothing to do with power. He feared putting her in danger simply because she mattered to him. He tried distancing himself, thinking it would protect her, but the emptiness that followed only made things worse. She noticed immediately, especially when he began avoiding her gaze, avoiding conversations, avoiding the quiet moments that had once held meaning for both of them. She confronted him gently one evening, her voice calm but her heart trembling. She told him she wasn't afraid, that she didn't want him to push her away to protect her. She reminded him that she had survived harder battles, that she had rebuilt her life from ashes, and that she wasn't fragile like he assumed. And for the first time, he understood that she wasn't someone who needed saving, she was someone who stood beside him, not behind him. Her strength didn't challenge his, it completed it. The tension broke the moment he finally let himself speak his truth. It wasn't a dramatic confession, not a cinematic declaration, it was simple, quiet, and honest. He told her that her presence brought him peace he didn't know he was capable of feeling. He told her that seeing her grow made him proud, not possessive. And he told her that his jealousy came from fear, not anger, from a heart that had never learned how to love someone without losing them. She listened without judgment, and in that quiet moment, their bond deepened into something real, something fragile yet powerful, something that changed the course of both their lives. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. He still struggled with vulnerability, still battled the shadows of his past. She still carried scars from her own pain. But they learned to grow together, two imperfect souls finding strength in each other's presence. The man who once snapped out of jealousy now guarded her with respect instead of fear. The woman who once trembled under his frustration now walked beside him with confidence. They became a reminder that even in the darkest worlds, light can bloom unexpectedly. And the most beautiful part? Their story wasn't built on grand gestures, it was built on healing, understanding, and the courage to face emotions neither of them had been taught to navigate. Their connection was slow, gentle, and deeply human, proving that even the most guarded hearts can learn to love when given patience and honesty.